and 10 a.m. Events occur in real time.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It's FPC Radio Live. It's Friday, and we're here to break down everything that's happened over the last 24 to 48 hours. And, when we were last on the air, we speculated about the future of the Browns quarterback position, Baker Mayfield, Desean Watson. And about 20 seconds after we got off the air on Wednesday, the trade actually happened. Baker Mayfield gets traded to the Carolina Panthers for a conditional fifth-round pick. I should check my notes, but I believe that is the case in 2024. So the Mayfield era in Cleveland is over. But we will get to that in just a moment, John. I am still recovering last night from the NHL Draft. 4 hours for round one, something the NFL would be very, very proud of, how the NHL dragged the entire event out. It was certainly exhausting.
Yeah, I mean, great work, but with the NHL draft, it's like a lot of unknowns, right? There's foreign players, there's some collegiate players, there's Canadian players that are in the juniors, so it's kind of a mishmash of all these different players that not a lot of people know much about unless you're a draft geek, obviously. But at least in the NFL, when you're seeing these guys getting drafted, especially the quarterbacks, we saw them play a ton of games. I mean, when Mac Jones was drafted by the Patriots, we'd seen him play a dozen times the year before at Alabama, win a national championship. So you know a little bit more about those players. With hockey, you really have to dig deep to find out about these guys and, to sell it as much as you can to the fan base. And then you're going to see most of these guys not play for a couple of years because they're so young.
Yeah, and look, I mean, part of that too is just like every other sport, football included. There was a lot of events canceled over the last couple of years, so there's a lot of missed opportunities to see some of these players as well. But you're right. I mean, it was a fun event. I do enjoy it, and I think if there were more hockey fans, if the entire United States were hockey fans, I think we could end all these problems by coming together and hating Gary Bettman, because the commitment to booing that man it's beyond impressive, and one of the few things that I think people from every walk of life can come together and agree on. Because and look, I mean, at this point, it's kind of a it's kind of a joke, and Gary Bettman's playing into it. He gets it or whatever, and kudos to him for taking it in stride and everything like that. And look, kind of the booing might be at this point just tradition, as opposed to hating the guy. But there was a lot of that, certainly whenever he came out to the stage. But look, I get it. It was in Montreal, so you're obviously it's very predominantly. It's not predominant. Is it predominantly French speaking? I might be exposing my lack of cultural.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I've only been up there a couple of times, and it was ages ago. I probably didn't know what language anyone was speaking at that point. I was probably so inebriated.
Well, I wasn't.
I think that's still their first language, but they've integrated the English language a little bit more than they did 40 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. This isn't, there's obviously a lot of English speaking, but I think French is still the predominant language. Either way, you knew you were obviously going to get a lot of French speaking versions of this, which obviously made the process a little bit longer. But no, I mean, look, it was an exciting event. I mean, if you're a Bruins fan, obviously it wasn't too terribly exciting because, well, they didn't have a first round pick. One team that didn't have a first round pick was the Chicago Blackhawks. They ended the day with 3 first round picks. So there are ways to make it without coming into the night with draft picks. Obviously 2 franchises and 2 very different situations. So it's not like the Bruins could have replicated what the Blackhawks done. But surprisingly, Yaroslav Slavkovsky, the Czech, goes first overall. I think Shane Wright was one of the popular names to be considered as the top overall pick. Obviously, being a Canadian, far more exposure here in the United States and North America, as opposed to the Czech guy. But back-to-back Czechs go first and second overall, which is quite historic when you think about, or in the history of the NHL. So that was pretty great. again, I mean, it was a fun event. I mean, I'm a hockey junkie, so I enjoy it. I did get a chuckle how long it was taking because, like I said, this is right out of the NFL playbook because we know, John, the NFL knows how to squeeze every single second, every single minute out of any sort of event that ever goes on that somewhat loosely involves football. They will make sure that they get every penny and dime out of that broadcast they can possibly get. And I think the NHL was trying for the same thing yesterday. 4 hours, man. 4 hours.
I mean, when the NFL releases the schedule, it's a big event, right?
Yeah.
It takes up 2-3 hours on ESPN, the NFL Network. It's a big story. I mean, it gets great ratings, and the two sports might be aligned, and that they both have their commissioners roundly booed. I don't know who's more disliked more. Is it Roger Goodell, the NFL audience, or Gary Bettman with the NHL? They're both pretty much despised.
Well, I'll
compared
say
to Adam Silver, who is wildly popular as the commissioner.
Well,
of the NBA.
I'll say this. When it comes to Bettman, I think a lot of that hate is in the past, and I don't think it's like I think people dislike Roger Goodell because they don't trust him. I think they look at him as just a bulletproof vest for the owners. I mean, and there's a lot of truth to that. And kind of just a guy that, again, like when he goes up there and, does these like fake, these hugs or whatever, I get it's a moment, but to me, I feel like that's so transparent. And it's like, this is the last moment that he's going to be on your side type of thing, like, okay,
Right.
good luck, and then like I said, back to remember the NFL awards. I remember ranting about this then, where it's like they were doing like this song to open it up, and then he comes in and completely ruined it. I mean, trying to be this funny, like goofy guy that goes and sits at his $20 million beach house in Maine. Like remember that whole thing during the draft, the virtual draft, or he was just one of the guys, even though he was down, probably sitting in his like $10,000 leather leather seat, like like kind of it was like a throne almost. So it's like, to me, I think there's different degrees of dislike for each commissioner. I do think Roger Goodell has surpassed Gary Bettman as the most hated one, because the NFL obviously is more popular, so obviously there's more people to hate him. But I do think that the Bettman hate is a little bit more tongue-in-cheek now, where it's like, okay, no matter what Bettman says, like they started booing Bettman just out of habit, and then he was up there to announce Canadians picks, like a trade for the Montreal Canadiens, and he was like, these trades involve the Canadians. You want to boo your own team? So like it's to that point, it's a bit funny, where I think there is some legitimate distaste for Roger Goodell, and certainly then you wrap in you throw in the the real life situations when it comes to dealing with players and some of the off the field issues and how he's handled some of those, where it's like there's legitimate reason to dislike the guy. I think a lot of that for Gary Bettman may be in the past, but so at least that's my perception of it.
As much of it too with Bettman is he presided over a lost year, right?
Oh yeah,
18 years ago, so that's major. And then there was the lockout in 2013, so 2012, 2013. So he's had some of those. Whereas under Goodell, there's been no work stoppages. I mean, it came close in 2011, but they got the deal done, and the schedule went on as on target. So I think that may be something to do with Bettman. But you're right. I mean, the NFL is so popular that the love and the hate are just exaggerated when it comes to any aspect of that particular sport.
Yeah, I mean, and look, I mean, at this point, like I said, I that was part of the fun. Although I do worry, John, that his participation, Bettman that is, and all of this is going to ruin it, like the Collinsworth slide. Remember when Collinsworth became aware that everyone loved it, and then he just did it, and then it ruined it? I mean, let me be clear. I thought it was kind of lame to begin with. I'm not like one of these, oh my God, it's the Collinsworth slide. So I was kind of hip to that being lame, and I basically just spoke myself into old age right there. But I thought it was kind of just silly to begin with, and then then it became a thing. How sometimes it's like, all right, now it's become too popular. It's like, all right, you kind of quote unquote jumped the shark a little bit on that one. So I kind of worry. Although, again, this is like decades worth of booing commitment from fans to Gary Bettman. So I don't know if it's ever actually going to go away. The Collinsworth thing was it was on a slippery slope to begin with, but I do worry that his playing into it does kind of kill the joke a little bit, because it's like, okay, all right, we just want to boo you. We don't need you to acknowledge it and have fun with it. All right, um, so yeah, the NHL draft will obviously continue today. That was just the first round. If you're interested, obviously, in following along and don't want to watch or can't watch, definitely head over to fullpresshockey.com and, of course, Full Press NHL. We, as a team, we were all kind of rocking it yesterday, last night. It was a long day, but there's a lot of information, including a full recap of the first round, as well as several trades and re-signings that happened throughout the day. So definitely check that out. Definitely stay tuned all day today for the rest of the NHL draft. It's going to be pretty fun. So as I mentioned to start the show, John, right when we got off the air the other day, the topic that we spent so much time talking about, well, there was a solution to it. Baker Mayfield gets traded to the Carolina Panthers in exchange for, like I said, a conditional 4th-round pick in 2024. A far cry from his, first overall pick value. And now the Panthers have 2 first-round quarterbacks from the 2018 NFL Draft on their roster in Mayfield and, of course, Sam Darnold. Look, I said it the other day. There's no way, rhyme or reason Baker Mayfield would have ever or should have ever wanted to play for the Browns again under any circumstance, regardless of what happens with Desean Watson. I think this is the best opportunity that he could possibly get. And by that, I mean he's going to have an opportunity to compete. Now, have the Panthers upgraded? Yes. But this isn't a Apple version 14.0 going to 16.0. This is more like one of those, it's 14.1, but this is 14.2 because we're fixing a few of the bugs and things that don't work. This isn't a huge upgrade. I mean, it really isn't. I'm not a huge Baker Mayfield fan. I'm happy for him to get out of the situation in Cleveland because I thought it was just lose for him. But him over Sam Darnold, yeah, it's an upgrade, but I mean, come on. John, talk me out. Am I crazy here to think that this is just closer to a lateral move?
It's a lateral move. I mean, he was the first pick in 2018. Sam Darnold was the 3rd pick in 2018. They've both underperformed for whatever reasons, injuries. With Sam Darnold, maybe lack of talent around him or lack of ability. I was never high on him coming out of the draft. Baker Mayfield, I wasn't high on either. I don't think he has that needed athletic ability to be an elite quarterback. And he's not the most accurate guy either. And I think he loses half of the locker room with his attitude. But he was surrounded with more talent than Darnold was in New York when Baker played for 4 years with Cleveland. All they need to do now, Carolina, is maybe sign Josh Rosen, and they'll have 3 of the 5 quarterbacks that were drafted in the first round, who are the 3 worst quarterbacks that were drafted in the first round, because obviously Josh Allen, who went 7th overall, is the best of the lot, and then, of course, Lamar Jackson, who was 32nd, the final pick of the first round, is the second best quarterback from that draft. But yeah, it's a lateral move. I'm not sure what the hell Carolina's trying to do here, unless they're just hoping one of these 2 guys catches fire and they contend somehow, which I don't see happening. And again, you've got Matt Rule, who's in his 3rd year and is on the hot seat. If they go 6-11 this year, he'll be out of a job because David Tepper, the owner, is trigger happy. He's ready, willing, and able to blow things up. So I think Matt Rule and the front office is like, let's take a shot at this and maybe we catch lightning in a bottle.
Well, let's look at it this way. In the 4 seasons that Baker Mayfield was the starting quarterback, 3 of those seasons they only won 6 games with him as the starter. In 2020, they went 11-5 and they won a playoff game, and that kind of bought him a little bit more time. And he his rookie season, he set the record for passing yards or touchdowns, actually both, I believe. That was recently matched or surpassed by Justin Herbert. But to me, I'm not. If that's the crowning achievement of Baker Mayfield's tenure in Cleveland, I'm not that impressed, because I think that's more of a product of the era of the NFL than it is, and that's not to say, again, like, like I just mentioned, Justin Herbert has surpassed that. He's thrown the most yards and touchdowns as rookie, all that stuff. I'm not saying that's not impressive, and it wasn't not impressive when Baker did it. But if that is the crowning achievement of what Baker Mayfield is, and I think it is, then it's not that impressive. Because then you can sit back and say, well, it's probably more of a product of the era, and to your point, the talent around him in Cleveland. And look, I mean, we say it all the time: talent doesn't match success. You can have all the most talented players in the world, but if you're not, there's elements of football that just matter more than just talent alone. So just having talent doesn't guarantee success, and this is a perfect example: Baker Mayfield. You can have all these receivers, you can have all these defensive players, all this, all that. If you don't have a good enough quarterback, you ain't winning bleep in this league. I don't care who you are, what you've done in the past. You aren't winning consistently in this league without a really good to elite starting quarterback. And I don't think Baker Mayfield is either. So it doesn't surprise me that, he did. I think the talent probably elevated him more than he elevated the talent. And I think, you put together his accomplishments. Yes, the Browns went to the playoffs. They won a playoff game. But, like I said, his crowning achievement is probably his rookie season. And when you break it down and you kind of look at the landscape of the league, I'm starting to think that was more of a product of just the era and lack of film on young quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a marginal starter, as I do Sam Darnold. I think, I guess there's 32 starters in the NFL, and you can kind of break them down into the elite guys, the good guys, the average guys, and then there's marginal starters. I think both of those guys are there. I'll reference a game last year to prove your point. The Packers hosted Cleveland on Christmas Day, and the more I watched the game, I'm like, Cleveland has a better roster than Green Bay. But the difference was quarterback. And, of course, this gives me an opportunity to pump my guy up, Aaron Rodgers. But Rodgers didn't turn the ball over in that game and played good situational football. Baker Mayfield had 4 turnovers. And despite Cleveland looking like the better team to me, they just ran up and down the field. Green Bay couldn't stop their running attack. Yet Green Bay won the game because of those turnovers. And that's your point. The great quarterback will beat the average to poor quarterback more times than not, even if that average quarterback has a better roster. And that's where Cleveland was at. I mean, now they've got Desean Watson. Who the hell knows if he's going to play this year? That's a whole other, situation. So, Cleveland, which does have a good roster by all accounts, didn't have the quarterback to make it all happen.
Yeah. And look, I mean, we'll I'm sure certainly talk about this at great lengths throughout the season or heading into the season. But I've even talked about it before. I'm not even sold on Desean Watson being that elite quarterback yet. Like I said, I mean, his 5,000 yard, he led the league the last time he was a starter 2 years ago in passing, or 2 seasons ago, rather, 2020. Yeah. But to me, I'm not that impressed when you throw 5,000 yards on a team that goes 4-12. And, he's had some talent around him too. I mean, let's not pretend like he's been down in the, this isn't a situation where he's been held back or whatever. I think there's certainly talent there, but I'm not sold on him being this elite quarterback. And now after, a year, after not playing for a year, still not knowing what the solution or the result of this investigation and everything's going to be, what's he going to look like when he gets back on the field? I don't know. And, even if he is at his best, is it going to be good enough to make Cleveland a winning franchise? I don't know. We'll find out. So, I mean, the good thing is, I guess, for Cleveland is that they don't have too many cooks, so to speak. Not that, I mean, there's degrees of cooks. I mean, like Brady is a cook, just, at a fancy 5-star restaurant, probably one of the best in the world.
He's a chef.
Yeah, he's a chef. He's an executive chef. Yeah, he's an executive chef.
Exactly.
Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, those guys cook, but it's more like pop something in the microwave and, You better hope
Yeah.
you understand
Short
the
order
heating
cooks. Although
power of
I-
that microwave before you eat it.
I have a lot of respect for short order cooks. They're the ones that, can kind of flourish in chaos, when things are falling all over the place. I have a lot of respect for them. I mean, I owned a diner for 10 years and I did some of it and other guys
Well, let's put it this way.
but yeah.
This was Kramer. They're Kramer trying to run the Jewish singles night thing where he just completely overwhelmed, dropping everything, making things taste like crap. So technically, yes, he was a cook, but he just didn't cook that well. So look, I don't. To me, this does nothing to change the Panthers' outlook. I think their odds slightly improved on some sites, but they're still bottom third of the league when it comes to expectations and going to the Super Bowl, all that stuff. Is there's nothing to change their standing in the NFC, short of Baker Mayfield just having this unexpected great season. And I say unexpected because, well, again, like I said, I look at his 4 seasons in totality, and I don't expect all of a sudden an elite level season from Baker Mayfield. So to me, I'm like, all right, the Panthers they're desperate. It's been kind of a mixed bag of results since they had relative success with Cam Newton for a decade, essentially, almost, or it felt like it at least. 2011 to 29, about a decade, 8 years or so, and some playoff appearances, obviously the Super Bowl appearance and 15-1 season. But since then, it's been 3 years of just a revolving door, including a redo with Cam Newton that didn't go as well last season. But this has just been a messy franchise, and quarterback after quarterback. Now it's Sam Darnold. Now it's Baker Mayfield. So is Mayfield going to be the guy? I don't know. Even at his very best, maybe they're a playoff team. But to me, I just don't see the appeal of Baker Mayfield. And to your point, you said the things that turned me off right away. He's not really accurate. He doesn't have. I feel like he's missing it. You know what I mean? He has all the bravado without the backing of what normally you should like Tom Brady can talk and be cocky because, well, guess what? Who's going to say otherwise? Well, guess what? He's got the the success to back it up. And you don't even have
the old expression with Baker Mayfield be big hat, no cattle.
Yeah, no, that's great. And look, you don't even have to be Tom Brady to have the ability to talk and be cocky like that. I'm just first example that always comes to mind. It's the extreme of it. But Baker doesn't really have anything to back that bravado. So you combine those two things, and you're talking about an inaccurate, non-focused guy. And at quarterback, I don't want anything to do with that. So to me, I'm, those are two huge red flags for me, just as in general, not just Baker Mayfield, but based on, what I like in a quarterback. Without, when you're talking, if you're going to give me you're going to, without knowing much about the quarterbacks, you're going to give me their raw talents or abilities, what they're good at, what they're not good at, and you lay out a guy that's not that accurate and is missing some sort of part of it, I'm turning and walking away. And that's what I feel like with Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see what Cleveland does because we still don't know what the suspension is going to be for Desean Watson, and if whatever period of time he's out, it appears Jacoby Brissett will be the starter. Now, I also have to look into San Francisco. What's going to happen with Jimmy Garoppolo? Could we see Garoppolo traded from San Francisco to Cleveland, or if he's released, would Cleveland sign him as a stopgap? Because Garoppolo's a guy who I think could go into Cleveland and do a really good job, knowing that he's only going to be there for a year. He's much more. He's better suited to deal with that. He dealt with it last year pretty well in San Francisco, right? He knows his days are numbered in San Francisco, and he played pretty well last year. They got to the NFC Championship game, right? And he was fairly healthy.
But that could also kind of be what his fatal flaw is, though, and why he's not an elite quarterback.
Right. Yeah, he goes along. I mean, he seems like a good kid. The teammates like him, but he's not the guy who, like Tom Brady's competitiveness is just at such a level, that he just takes control of the situation that, he's just going to push back against any competition, not push back against fighting the competition, but he's going to destroy the competition.
Mhm.
Whereas Garoppolo's like, yeah, I'll back up Trey Lance, sure, for $20 million, we'll see, and I'll be a nice guy and hold it all together. Yeah, sometimes you want, look, the greatest athletes of all time all have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, and they're all a little bit unhinged, right? I mean, you almost have to be to carry yourself that way.
Yeah, and look, and I don't dislike Jimmy Garoppolo. Perfectly fine quarterback, but you're missing. With him, it's probably a better situation for Cleveland than any of the quarterbacks involved, because I do believe, and I hope Desean Watson is suspended. I mean, at this point, if he's not, then I talk about the hate that Roger Goodell is going to get. Well, you're going to have a lot of angry people. But as long as it doesn't hurt the owners, well, Roger Goodell will probably get a raise after all this. No, look, if Deshaun Watson's suspended, it seems very clear that Cleveland's probably going with Jacoby Brissett. And that was really seems to be the plan all along, even while Baker Mayfield was on the roster, because as much as I'd like to believe that the Cleveland Browns were even more incompetent than what they are, I do feel like they even saw this as there's no way we can keep Baker Mayfield, regardless of what happens with Deshaun Watson. There's no way you can keep him on the roster. So they're resigned to the fact that, look, if you have to roll with Jacoby Brissett. Very fine backup, very great teammate. And I think that's probably the best thing going for Cleveland right now, because if they do go to Jacoby Brissett, it's probably you're probably not going to win a lot of games. Excuse me, you're probably not going to win a lot of games, but Jacoby's going to be a leader, and he's going to be a great teammate and someone that's not going to make things worse than what they are in Cleveland. And I think that's probably the best you can hope for right now, because they are weathering a storm that they created themselves. This isn't a unexpected hurdle that they got to overcome. No, this was a bad situation that was really entirely created by themselves. So if they can weather the storm under the worst possible outcome, i.e. no Baker Mayfield, no Deshaun Watson, then you might have a somewhat positive outlook for this team as they move forward. And who knows what happens in the future. But right now, Cleveland's definitely got to roll with Jacoby Brissett and just hope for the best, because there's really not too many other options out there for them.
And the tough part of this is, even if they tank, that first round pick next year goes to Houston. Mm-hmm. So the Houston Texans right now are rooting against the Cleveland Browns because they own their first round pick next year. So, Cleveland's in a situation kind of like the Lakers are in basketball, where no matter what they do, they don't own their first round picks for the next several years. So, you can't go into tank mode because it's only going to benefit another team. In the case of the Browns, it'll benefit the Houston Texans, who just sit tight and see what they can get from that Deshaun Watson trade. And again, Cleveland's a mess because an organization like that never gets anything right becomes desperate. They do desperate things. They give a $230 million fully guaranteed contract to a quarterback who didn't play last year and most likely won't play all of this year, or at least part of this year, because of the suspension. But that's what the Cleveland Browns do, and they've been doing it since they came back into the league in 1999.
Well, and think of this, and like I said, even at his absolute best, I don't know if Deshaun Watson is a $230 million quarterback. Right. So Cleveland's not, you're not paying for a guy that's done it year in, year out. And like when he's on the field, you're going to get a certain high quality level of quarterback play. Like I said, even at his best from what he's done in the league so far, I don't think Deshaun Watson is that level of quarterback. So Cleveland's anticipating he not only matches but surpasses what he's done already in this league, and I think that is a very tall order. So interesting to see what's going to happen. I think you talk about rooting against Cleveland. I think a lot of people are rooting against Cleveland, not just NFC or AFC North teams, not even Browns rivals. I think a lot of non-Browns fans and even some Browns fans are a little turned off by the whole Deshaun Watson situation. So it's not going to be an easy season if the Browns do lose, because they're not going to get any sympathy from anyone. And I think that could certainly make things worse inside the locker room and inside the team itself if it begins to snowball. So that is a topic we will certainly be following throughout the rest of the offseason and into the season. So anyways, happy July. Happy almost NFL training camp, and happy Friday, everyone. We are going to take off. Hope you have a great weekend. Enjoy the NHL draft. Remember, follow at Full Press NHL, at fullpresshockey.com for all your NHL draft and upcoming NHL free agency news and notes. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we will talk to you later.